welcome to our first Women's Nonprofit Network webinar, where we are joined by Kate Ewing, the Manager of Leadership Giving at SickKids. And today we're going to be discussing how to elevate your fundraising game. But before we dive in, for those who haven't heard of WNN, essentially this is a dedicated space for women in the nonprofit sector to connect, collaborate, and grow together. As someone who's really early in my career, there's so much I don't know. And I've really learned that so many women in particular are siloed in this space, lack opportunities, lack capacity for like leadership development and professional development. And there's so much value in coming together and learning from one another. So today's session is going to be a great opportunity for those watching to learn from Kate and hopefully increase your organization's capacity to fundraise and grow. So now to hand it off, Kate, thank you so much for being here. And so many members of WNN had a ton of questions for you. So to kick it off, what inspired you to become a fundraising expert and how did you develop your expertise in the field?
Thanks, Haley, and thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I would say I fell into fundraising. So background was went to school for business, definitely ended up down the sales pathway and found myself at Queen's University and started work in the development and alumni engagement office there. And the more I got to see the impact of the work and the difference that we were making there, I just kind of fell in love with the idea of being involved in something so much bigger than I was. Definitely like a cause and something that I could get behind and was really passionate about. Getting up for work wasn't ever a problem for me. And so I would say fundraising just lit something inside of me that hadn't actually happened before. And my whole career has been to be a part of organizations and causes that I'm super passionate about and that allow me to feel like I'm making an impact and have, meaning and purpose here. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, we have such a similar trajectory. Like I was also at Smith at Queens, and to me, it just wasn't enough to work at a big bank or big corporation that's selling products. I needed to feel like I had like a deep connection to the organization I was working for, and ultimately, led me into the nonprofit sector as well. So I deeply, deeply resonate with your trajectory as well. So I'm curious, what was your most successful fundraiser to date?
I was fortunate at Queens to be a part of like various different strategies and whatnot. So, it could be one-to-one donor fundraising. There's a large class giving campaign around homecoming, which brings together classes. So it's that peer-to-peer side of things that could raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. Obviously, being a part of SickKids and the incredible work that they do, we see some really incredible fundraising campaigns that way. But myself individually probably would have been the peer-to-peer side. Again, it comes back to that whole power of the collective. I haven't had the opportunity to work with donors who are giving, transformational size donations. And so that power of the collective really can increase the volume that you're raising. The total that you're raising. And so, if it's 100 classmates get behind something, and each person is capable of giving X, you really can see how the value grows really quickly. And so I would say the class giving kind of portfolio, again, just because of the size of it, has been allowed me to be a part of a large campaign.
That's awesome. So in terms of peer-to-peer fundraising, for organizations who haven't pursued that, like what does peer-to-peer fundraising look like and what kind of challenges have you encountered with it? And then also maybe in comparison to these larger donations, like what are the drawbacks and benefits of doing peer-to-peer fundraising?
Yeah, I think, as organizations grow, it's to try and find ways to engage donors. So you're going to have donors who are going to be interested in giving individually because it's, a meaningful cause to them and it's something that they have no problem getting behind. And your case for support matches so incredibly well with their desire to make an impact. And so, you're going to have your individual donors, and whether that's a donor who has the capacity to give at a $5 value or a donor who has the capacity to give at a $5 million value, they're still the same person. Conversations obviously are a little bit different and whatnot, but it's still in essence the same type of thing. It's somebody who believes in your cause, that they're willing to do something that is meaningful to them. and they put, their money behind it. The flip side of that is the peer-to-peer side of things, which, people believe in your cause, but they get caught up in and excited about being a part of something that others are doing. And so not only do they want to join in that movement, but then you also have champions who are part of those campaigns that are, doing that peer-to-peer side of it. So as an example, with like a class giving campaign is, you might have some individuals from the class who are really kind of spearheading and leading that, and they're actually asking their classmates to join them to be a part of it. And so it is really kind of having them do some of the work for you, while they have the relationships with these individuals. And so it's not, I would say, so much as like a cold kind of ask that way, because there's already a relationship oftentimes between the classmate, gone to school together or whatnot. And that's just one example. I mean, you could do peer-to-peer solicitations, if they've been a part of your organization and, they volunteered in some capacity, so that, they share that commonality and whatnot. So I think that it can transfer across many different organizations and levels that way. The drawbacks to it are, as an example, if a type of activity goes away, so like when COVID happened and homecoming wasn't a thing at Queen's, it became really challenging to try and fundraise around an event that wasn't actually an event because we couldn't host it because of COVID. So I think it's being careful that the connection to the cause is still the reason why people are giving, and that they've joined your movement. And again, really incredible stewardship and communication to your donors, so that if and when, things shift or change and you're not able to maybe host it around XYZ, or the person asking is no longer involved in your organization and whatnot, you just want to make sure that those that you've already had join your journey still feel deeply connected to the cause, in which case they would still continue to give with or without that strategy in place.
That's awesome. So when you mentioned like championing your cause, and I'm curious, what is your number one strategy for getting recurring donors? Because I feel like that's a huge issue that many small nonprofits in particular struggle with getting. I get like an ad hoc one-time donation of $50 for my mental health charity, but at the same time, like, why isn't that not a monthly thing? And for example, you mentioned Queens. You probably have alumni who are giving every single year the exact same amount or maybe even increasing. So do you have any recommendations for driving recurring donors, and like how do you really nurture those relationships?
I think it comes back to demonstrating that impact piece. And so, I mean, I think the connection to the cause piece has to exist, which it likely does if they've been able to, make a donation in some kind. You've now got them engaged and interested. It's your job to make sure they stay engaged and interested. And I think you can do that in a number of ways. One being like incredible storytelling. So making sure that you're telling them, the why behind you need their donations, and then demonstrating the impact of it. We're seeing a massive increase in terms of donors now wanting that accountability from organizations to see the impact in which they're having. They don't want to receive a pen or, a thank you in that kind of capacity. They want to see how they've made a difference. And that's what's going to turn into that recurring piece of it. I think, the strategies that we talk about are the need for recurring revenue to plan for the future. And so without knowing, especially in a lot of smaller not-for-profits, is if you don't know where the money's coming from 6 months from now, it makes it incredibly challenging for you to do the work that you need to do. And so I think it's explaining, lots of people I think don't understand the need for recurring revenue. So there's the education piece. Oftentimes people don't even know it's an option. So educating your donors around what options are available, and then really demonstrating why you need
Absolutely.
recurring, consistent, stable funding so that you can do the good work of X in the future. But it all kind of comes back to incredible storytelling and incredible stewardship to keep those donors.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned the idea of storytelling, which absolutely, like for example, if I see, I used to get like postcards from the Ontario Humane Society, and they'd always show like a picture of a dog and how they've been helping this dog, and I immediately wanted to like sign off $50 because I'm like, oh, I want to help this dog. Like it was an amazing story. But another piece of it, I think a lot of small nonprofits in particular struggle with is capturing the impact, which is data. So I'm curious, like, what do you think that nonprofits should be capturing in terms of data? How do you go about tracking that, as well as in terms of like even just managing donors? Are there any systems that you leverage to, make sure you're tracking who's donating what and when to follow up with them?
Yeah, I mean, throughout my career, I've worked with, a variety of different kind of systems and whatnot. And I would say I've enjoyed, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like as much data as you can collect is probably going to be beneficial in terms of knowing your donor best. I'm sure if you could ask organizations 20 years from now, or 20 years ago, if they had collected cell phone data, what that would actually mean to them today. Although maybe not, because I don't know if we're allowed to use that the same way now moving forward. But regardless, I think that there's a lot more information we would have liked to have captured way back when. So I think as much as people are comfortable sharing with you, but the idea of also keeping it clean. We know that people are constantly changing where they work, and so email addresses change and whatnot. So doing your absolute best to stay connected to your donors, that you're top of mind if there is a change, they contact you to update their information, or that you're in regular contact with them, that of life changes and big moments like that. So I think that having really, really clean data is kind of your number one staple. And a good CRM system. I mean, there's a ton out there. Razor's Edge is one that I've enjoyed using throughout my career. And then I think leveraging other kind of built-in features with some of those. So like Salesforce has some really incredible built-in features, that allow you to do some great work with email, and then it integrates with their CRM system and whatnot. So I think at the end of the day, whether you're a really small organization or really big, you want to have clean data. And if you can have the ability to do a little bit of reporting, so that you can see and highlight some trends, as well as some of those built-in features, again, just for efficiency use, I think are probably some really great places to start.
Awesome. Yeah, for me, like with my own nonprofit, I use a spreadsheet, but at the same time, there's so much like manual work to do that. So I think definitely getting in on like some sort of CRM. I know even Canada Helps has like some free tools for that, at least to, at least capture some of that data. But I think, I don't think anyone should underestimate the power of numbers, like to back up your story. And I think that so many nonprofits overlook that piece, like, oh, it doesn't matter, we can just say that we do this, but like how, why, like so many people are having these questions now. And so I think data is absolutely crucial in terms of communicating the impact of your organization, and also just in terms of your marketing efforts. Like that's the stuff that I want to see. Just switching gears a little bit, we had a question from one of our WNN members. And she said that how can organizations effectively leverage the various months and holidays throughout the year to align with the mission and goals of their nonprofit? So like, for example, a mental health charity during Mental Health Awareness Month, or like a women's charity around International Women's Day. What sort of success stories have you seen with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would absolutely encourage, if it makes sense. Again, your organization will know what suits best with your brand. I think it's important to be authentic and genuine. Donors will read through it if you're not. So I think if it's a strategic opportunity that is a really good fit, I would encourage it. I've seen, Giving Tuesday as an example, have some really incredible success. And again, but I think it all comes back to the ability to tell a really convincing and compelling case for support. One of the unique strategies I would say that seems to be catching on is, the ability to double your donation or have an anonymous matcher. So if your organization is working or can partner with another organization where you can, leverage an incentive like that around a specific event or day. I've seen some really great success with a variety of different organizations and charities. So I think that it makes sense. Again, you want to be careful just how much you're doing it, and again, to make sure that it
Yeah.
aligns really well with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was perfect timing because International Women's Day just passed, and
Yes.
it's funny to see like what posts like on LinkedIn or whichever platform do really, really well, the ones that do poorly. And I think the ones that do super, super well were those organizations that really demonstrated how they're actually accelerating women and advancing women in the various industries that they serve. They're quantifying the impact. They're showing how like they're actually giving back to women and advancing them rather than just like a happy International Women's Day post. Like there's nothing else other than that, and people see right through that. I think it's
Yeah.
super important. Quality is everything, and again, like going back to data, like demonstrate how you're actually advancing, for example, in this case, women in the various industries that you serve. So I totally resonate with that. You mentioned corporate matching or anonymous donor matching, and I'm super curious because I never had the opportunity myself to like investigate this or reach out to different organizations to partner with mine. So how do you develop a compelling case to get someone to partner with you like that? Because like you're asking, for example, you want them to match up to $5,000. Well, what's that benefit to them? So I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, and again, I think I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think it comes back to again, really strong alignment. So making sure that, whatever it is that your organization is a part of, aligns with, whether it's the core values or, the strategic vision of the organization that you've reached out to. They get reached out to a ton. So, how do you differentiate yourself? Because we know that this is an incredibly and increasingly growing competitive market. And so just in the not-for-profit sector in general. And so I think it's, making yourself stand out and differentiate based on the work in which you do. So whether that's, a story you can tell, and it can be an anonymous story depending upon the type of work that you do, or if it's not, putting a face behind it and explaining, again, that difference and impact that they can be a part of. And then whatever kind of incentives that you're willing to offer. So if it's, they get exposure with their logo or their brand or whatnot, and you've got an audience size of this, or you can talk about who you've engaged and how, they then can be a part of that. It gives them the opportunity maybe to be a part of a group that they haven't otherwise been a part of or wouldn't have access to. So there's a variety of different benefits. And again, it just comes back to who you are, what you do, and providing some kind of value add to them. Lots of corporations have lots of dollars to give out. So I would encourage a lot of people to look at that avenue. Again, just comes back to that. Make sure that you're genuine and, in terms of don't blanket reach out to a bunch of different people if it doesn't make any kind of sense. And then just provide like a really strong why.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said something around like brand alignment, and I think that's super crucial. Like, whereas how do they better tell their brand story? And a lot of the times they look for these different partnerships so that way they can take the data from whatever campaign they invested dollars in, so that way they can make a compelling case to better sell their brands. So I think that's a great
Absolutely.
point.
And sorry, just to speak up to that, it's going to come back to, and this is why investing as soon as you can invest in, a really good system that helps you have your data. Because again, this is going to give you the ability to be strategic in every decision that you make moving forward. And so, if an Excel sheet is, all that you've got right now, then you do your absolute best to make sure that that thing is as clean and as updated as humanly possible. So that when you are providing that case to whether it's a corporate partner or whatnot, that you can say with 100% accuracy that like, yes, I have this number of people part of my organization, average, age is this, and all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. A logo will not suffice. I think a lot of people approach corporate partners and sponsors with the opportunity to put a logo on their website, and I really don't care as much about that as they do about the story and the data, as you mentioned earlier. So really consider about when you're building out your sponsorship prospectus or deck, make sure that you're focusing on the story and the data that they're going to get from it that will actually enhance the ROI of their own business. Because why would a lot of the times too, I think I've heard people say like, oh yeah, sponsors just want to give money for the sake of giving money. I'm like, no, they want to give money for the sake of advancing their businesses. So yeah,
Definitely.
I've heard that a couple times. I'm like, no, that is not the case. So I had another question for you. Um, how can nonprofits make the most out of their limited resources and maximize their fundraising efforts? Like, as we know, like a lot of nonprofits have a very, very, very small teams. They're usually operating in the jack of all trades mindsets, especially executive directors. So if you have any advice for nonprofits who are really operating in a very small capacity with very limited resources, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, and I should preface, I work at SickKids Foundation, which is a fabulous organization to be a part of. However, the team in which I operate on is a team of 4. And so um, how we operate is we leverage, assets that already exist. And so I think it's being really smart about what it is you're developing and thinking about how you can maximize the number of times you use that and how you're going to use it. So as an example, if it's telling, a patient story and it's you want to reach this audience this way, how can you continue to tell that patient story, whether it's like a patient update or through a different channel, so that you're not recreating that wheel every single time. It allows you to move, be really agile and flexible and get assets and keep things moving really quickly. So I think it's not recreating the wheel, creating 1 or 2 really strong cases for support and then continuing to reiterate, reuse, retell that same thing. So I think that that's one strategy. I think oftentimes we try to overcomplicate it, like, oh, I got to do all of these different things with all of these different platforms and whatnot. And maybe you do, but maybe you don't. And again, especially for folks who are starting out or who have an established donor base, you can continue to use a lot of what you have. We know how many messages we receive every single day. Continuing to tell the same kind of story over and over isn't actually a bad thing. It actually means that you might break through all of the noise and they might remember the story about Haley. So I would strongly encourage folks to do that. I think, again, it's working like smarter, not harder. And so what I would mean by that is, again, whether it's with your data, it's like looking for, trends and patterns. So let's say, Haley, in your spreadsheet, you've got 50 kind of, individuals in there that you've identified that have given, for the last couple of years, they give at the same kind of level. Maybe those are great people to reach out and try and have one-to-one conversations with about the recurring revenue piece that you were talking about and how, your organization needs that stable and consistent funding. And so, more time consuming approach, but strategic in the sense of you're using what you already have with the hopes of, converting that into recurring revenue. So not time wasted. So I think it's, again, using kind of what you have, and everybody on here is going to have a variety of, different stages that they're at, but using what you have, to keep it lean, and so that you can move really quickly as well. And I don't know, I think that, like, it's hard to answer in terms of like a entire
Yeah.
like broad audience that way, but I think that we oftentimes try to overcomplicate with tech and a variety of different things. And I think it really is about going back to basics and keeping it relatively simple, knowing that we all have a bunch of different other things that we also need to do on our plates.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I actually loved how you mentioned not to reinvent the wheel, because as a full-time marketer on the side that works with nonprofits all day, the biggest thing is like a key concept is that it takes 7 impressions on average to remember a brand. And so if you keep that story consistent, you're consistently telling the same things over and over again, eventually there's going to be recognition and also remembering, and eventually it'll inspire action, whether it be, signing up to volunteer or, actually converting donors or converting corporate partners. So I think I absolutely love that approach. And I think, yeah, keeping it simple and also like keeping your priorities in check too. Like I know so many either executive directors or staff members that really get in the weeds in things, which actually prevents them from focusing on what they should be prioritizing. So I think that that's also really key, and to not overcomplicate things as well. It's like you mentioned, because I know sometimes we want to operate like how, maybe a big bank would operate. We have very, very specialized fields, but that's not how it works in this sector. It's very much, prioritizing what you can and getting what you can done, but not worrying about the little things as much. Yeah. Awesome. So, final question for you. As a fundraising expert, what advice do you have for nonprofits to stay motivated and inspired in their fundraising endeavors, especially during the challenging times? Right now, the economy isn't great. Things are getting more expensive. People don't have as much money to give in terms of donations or participation in fundraising efforts. So, what can you give to us in terms of a little dose of inspiration or even just advice in general around navigating the uncertainty?
Yeah, and I won't pretend that it's the easiest days. So I am very empathetic to all of you that way. There's actually quite a few different things I've learned over the years. I will preface, I don't think I'm an expert in fundraising. I appreciate you saying that. I think it's a field where we're always learning and growing, and I'm excited to work here and be a part of it. And I've had the opportunity to work alongside and continue to work with a lot of amazing people. And I think the work that you're doing will only help elevate, women in this field. So thank you for that. But how I stay motivated, again, is through a variety of different things. Pick up the phone and call your donors. There is, if I'm having a hard day or whatnot, and I have the opportunity to share with them, the impact that they've made, or a story that I think would resonate with them, or a recent, research piece or patent that just got approved, like pick up and share any good news with them. It will make your day and theirs, and continue to reinforce kind of why you do what you do. I think be a part of and get involved in organizations you can stand behind the cause, regardless of the good days, the heavy days, the days that you feel like people are just saying no, left, right, and center. If you are really grounded in the work that you do and the why, it makes picking up that phone or sending out another email or meeting with somebody in person makes it that much easier. Both at Queens and at SickKids, I've always loved walking. I fundraised for the business faculty. I always loved walking the halls of Goods Hall, and just seeing students and knowing that I'm a part of that. And how some of them got there, and get to play a small piece in that journey. So get out and be around the recipients of the work that you do. SickKids, like, I get goosebumps every time I walk into the hospital. And again, it's just walk the halls, but knowing that you're part of something so much bigger, again, just reinforces why we do what we do. And those are my examples. You'll have your own based on the work in which you do, but find those small kind of things throughout. So connect with your donors, be around what you do, whether that's if you can physically do it or virtually do it, and the recipients of it. And then worst case scenario is connect with a colleague in the profession. I've had amazing chats and tears and all the like, when we can just like share and be vulnerable and accept that the work's not always easy.
Totally. And I love how you mentioned like not underestimating the power of like talking and interacting with your donors. I feel like that's something that I don't consider often. I think that's something that needs to definitely be a priority. Just like showcasing where their dollars are going and showing that storytelling piece, but like on a more personal level, and actually seeing them in real life and the recipients of those dollars is so crucial. And I feel like I don't take advantage of that opportunity as much as I should. And so that's a really great piece of advice. But also another thing is the reason why I started this whole network in the first place was to go and connect with people who are experiencing the exact same challenges as me. And so listening to you talk really like it validated a lot of the things that I'm feeling in terms of working with my clients, but also working on my own nonprofit endeavors. And also likely the women in this group are also going to be like, yeah, that I totally resonate with these struggles and challenges, and talking through it can also energize you and inspire you to keep the needle moving forward, right? So I really appreciated that sentiment. And also thank you so much for being the first target of my webinar series for the Women's Nonprofit Network. This was an amazing discussion. And again, I'm going to link all of your information in the video description below, and also some of the tools that you had also mentioned in this discussion, just so folks watching can also access them and start implementing them into their fundraising strategies. So thanks so much, Kate, for being here, and thanks so much for watching, everyone.
Thank you, Haley.